The ideas, procedures, and suggestions contained within this podcast are not intended as a substitute for consulting with a medical professional. All matters regarding your health and fitness require medical consultation and supervision. Welcome to the Warrior Wellness Podcast, a podcast for military members, veterans, and first responders focusing on fitness, health, nutrition, and biohacking. Our mission with this podcast is to introduce America's heroes to lifestyle habits and hacks that will help them live healthier, happier lives, and in turn, be fit enough to continue their support of their communities and country.
Well, Catherine, thank you so much for coming back on the Warrior Wellness Podcast. You and Dr. Bill Schindler are the only two who have been on my podcast twice. So you're very special.
Wow. I'm honored. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me the first time and now the second time.
Yes. Thanks so much for coming back. And we were excited to have Catherine back because, I mean, not only does she just, she's a world of knowledge and science, but she has some exciting news as far as her products, her algae products called Energy Bits, being used in some amazing research studies. And she has some early findings that she would love to share with us. And I was so excited about this because I think this is such a game changer and such amazing news for mitochondrial health, which we know is just basically the foundation for health.
Yep.
So you're going to talk a little bit about that. So welcome back, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, everything starts and ends with mitochondria. It determines whether you're healthy or not. So I'm now on this, the mighty mitochondria are where the action is. All the science, research for longevity, for chronic disease. They're realizing all these chronic diseases are really mitochondrial diseases. So it's this common thread through all of them. So yeah, and as you're going to find out, algae has some amazing nutrients that aren't found anywhere else that are perfectly suited to protect and restore your mitochondria. And it does it through nutrition. So it's non-interventionist and safe. At least ours is safe. Can't say that for everybody's algae, but certainly for ours. So you can't lose, right? And I do want to talk about a little bit about the algae to give a backdrop before we get into it. The different algae, which ones, the spirulina and the chlorella, they do different things in your body, and why spirulina, as you'll find out, as I'll talk about, is really the algae to take for mitochondrial health, and chlorella is really the algae for immune health. And when you have those two areas in your life covered, you will live long, not just long, but well. And that's what we want, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So I can just give people a quick, in case you didn't see or hear the first podcast, I'll just go quickly, a quick overview about what algae is, and then we'll dig into the mitochondria, and then we'll dig into the clinical trial that we were doing regarding brain health. And I do also want to touch on cancer because I've got some interesting stuff to show you or talk about it. So algae, first of all, cyanobacteria, which spirulina is a cyanobacteria, was the first life on Earth almost 4 billion years ago, and it's all documented in science. And by the way, anything I say today is documented in science. We are not medical professionals, so I can't claim that algae will cure anything. But what I can tell you is that there are nutrients found in algae that have been proven to do that. So just want to sort of make sure everybody understands where the limitations I have in sharing information. So algae is everywhere. And there are two main types of algae. There's macroalgae and microalgae. Macroalgae is that big stringy stuff that washes up on shore, also known as seaweed or dulse. It's very good for you because it's loaded with fiber and iodine, but it has virtually no nutrition. And that's not what we're talking about today, but I do want you to know that it's part of the same family. Microalgae is called microalgae because it's microscopic in size. It's so tiny, you can't see it with your eyes. And I read somewhere that something like 1 million microalgae could fit on the head of a pin. That's how tiny it is. And that's why when you start to understand how we sell our algae in these little tiny tablets about the size of a baby aspirin, they're so concentrated in nutrition, because when you consolidate that many cells into these tiny little tablets, you start to understand why the nutritional density is there. So microalgae is everywhere. Macroalgae only in the sea. Microalgae is in the lakes, the rivers, the streams, the soil, your aquarium. And there are tens of thousands of strains of microalgae. The ones you probably know the most are blue-green algae and green, although there's also red algae. Now, we're talking about spirulina and chlorella. Spirulina is one strain of algae, and chlorella is one strain of green algae. Spirulina is one strain of blue-green. So, but there's many, many other strains, and these two, spirulina and chlorella, are the two that are harvested as food crops. I'm showing a picture of a spirulina farm and a chlorella farm. So I need you to know that, yes, there's blue-green algae and green algae in the ocean, but they're not spirulina or chlorella. Whether you go to Whole Foods or Costco or us, 99% of those spirulina and chlorella are harvested as food crops in fresh water. So not the ocean. So you're not getting toxins. Yes, there is blue-green algae in the ocean, and you might go online and read about it closing your favorite beach. But I want to point out, poor old algae gets the bum rap because it shows up to kill when there's bacteria or toxins, because it will absorb them and it will kill bacteria. So you couldn't see the toxins, but you can see the algae bloom, because that's what it's doing, is killing whatever's there. It does the same thing in your body, by the way, but that's not spirulina or chlorella. Spirulina and chlorella are grown, as I said, in fresh water. We grow ours in triple filtered spring mountain water, and then we air dry them without high heat, which is very important because we're one of the few I know that does that. And the reason why it's important is because high heat kills enzymes. And we're going to talk about a very important one for your mitochondria called superoxide dismutase. It also kills pigments, and we're going to talk about a very important one called phycocyanin, which has been proven to kill cancer cells. So you want algae that has not been exposed to high heat. And when we get, I'll be talking about spirulina next, but the only other spirulina I can recommend other than ours is frozen spirulina, because that way we know for sure heat has not been used, because obviously it's frozen. So, but the trouble with frozen spirulina is it's messy, it's hard to find, it's expensive, you can't travel with it, it expires quickly. So the tablets are much easier, and that's what we do. We air dry it, and then we press them into these tablets that we call bits, because they're bits of food, bits of nutrition. There's nothing else in them. It's 100% spirulina or 100% chlorella, although we have a brand called Vitality Bits as a blend of the two of them. They're so concentrated in nutrition that one tablet has the same amount of nutrition as an entire plate of vegetables. And I came up with that calculation because we have a quote from NASA that says 1 gram of algae has the same nutrition as 1,000 grams of vegetables, 1 to 1,000. And that's why I told you about how tiny these little cells are, because when you start consolidating them into these tablets, you can start to see why and how you get so much nutrition out of something that's so tiny. So if you aren't eating vegetables, or even if you are, because our soils, the reason people are getting sick, quite honestly, is, in my opinion, is two reasons. A, they're not getting the nutrition that they need, and B, they have too many toxins. They're not getting the nutrition that they need because our soils are so overcropped. There's no minerals left in the soil for the plants to pull up. Our vegetables are grown so far away, so they're harvested before the enzymes and the nutrients can get to the plant, to the leaves or the fruit. They travel in the dark in big freighters and warehouses, and by the time they get to your table to eat, they've lost about 80% of their nutrients, and they started with 80% less. So A, we're not getting the nutrition that we need. And, you can't drive your car without gas, or you can't use your iPhone without electricity. So why do we think that we can put things in our bodies that aren't nutritious and still have health? It defies the logic, right? So I need you to understand, you need to give your body the nutrients it needs, and we're going to talk about what those are today, some of them. And then when you do, everything seems to work. So lack of nutrition is number one. Spirulina, as you're going to find out, fills all those gaps. It's very energizing and nourishing. And chlorella is a wellness algae, and it pulls out toxins. I read that the average adult in North America has, I think, 700 toxins in their body, and our immune systems simply were not built to sustain that kind of toxic load. And the toxin can be anything from crappy canola oil or glyphosate or pesticides. It doesn't matter what it is, but they interfere with your body's functioning. They lodge themselves into your cell walls and prevent nutrients from getting in or toxins from getting out. Communications get disturbed. So you got to get those toxins out. And chlorella has been used for decades for doing that. And we'll explain that. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. And on that note, on the density, we sell our algae in large bags of 1,000 tablets. And using that quote from NASA, I found out that each bag of our 1,000 tablets has the same nutrition as 551 pounds of vegetables.
Wow.
And so it's efficient nutrition.
What a bargain.
Doesn't look like much, but if you took 10 a day, it would last you 3 months, number one. You didn't have to carry home 551 pounds of vegetables or clean them or cook them or fight with your family to eat them. And then our algae tablets have like a 3-year shelf life, so they don't go bad like your cucumbers go slimy after a couple of days, or your arugula goes yellow, and there's a lot of waste with vegetables. So the algae tablets are very efficient in time. If you can swallow water, you can get the nutrients you need in seconds. They're efficient financially. So 551 pounds at $3 a pound would have been $1,500 instead of the 100 that you'll be spending on our website. So, and there's no work and there's no taste. So those of you who don't like vegetables, or you get gas from vegetables, or you simply don't have time, or you're traveling a lot, you can't very well put a bunch of broccoli in your travel carry-on, although I've been known to do that in the past. So I don't do it anymore. It just makes it so much easier. So that's, algae, because of the concentration, the international endorsements. It's been used for safely every day in Asia for 60 years. And it's been documented in 100,000 studies in various medical libraries. So the only problem with algae is that you don't know about it.
Exactly.
And you haven't been given an opportunity to find a company that cares about you and cares about you so much that we've made sure that what algae we do and we grow is very safe and pure, and we do third-party lab tests because we sell through doctors. So just like you didn't know about chia or matcha or kiwa or collagen powder until somebody educated you about these, even though they've been around for centuries in other countries, I'm doing the same thing for algae. And trust me, algae is going to change the world. There's pockets of people all around the world. It doesn't matter whether I had a 2-hour conversation with a scientist in Spain yesterday. We're going to be working with them. Spain, Greece, Poland. It doesn't matter. Iceland even grows algae. They grow it underground. But it's the most concentrated nutrition, eco-friendly, sustainable, and honestly will change your health trajectory, your children's, and the world. So, and our poor Mother Nature, she's suffering. Look at all the heat issues that we're facing. It's environmental change is happening faster than you can believe, and we've got to do what we can to in our own world, in our own lives, to A, look after ourselves, and B, help look after Mother Earth. And you can't find a better partner to do that than with algae. So I'm proud to be Mother Nature's spokesperson for algae because it's been waiting to be noticed.
Right.
Okay, so that's kind of like a backdrop of we're getting before we dig into the mitochondria. So I talked about the 2 algae. I'll give you just a little bit more detail on those. So the spirulina is known as energy. We call ours energy bits because it's very energizing to your brain, to your body, and to your mitochondria. I'll get into the mitochondria in a minute, but what it does for your brain and your body, why it is energizing, and is because it has the highest concentration of protein in the world. It's 3 times the amount of steak by weight. And all the amino acids are in individual forms. So with animal protein, it's all bound up, and it takes days often to break it down into aminos. collagen is in smaller clusters, which get absorbed faster, but algae, the aminos are all individual, so they're absorbed instantly. So and so the bioavailability is so remarkable. You could eat 50 grams of chicken, but you might only end up getting 10% of that as aminos, which is 5 grams. A pouch of our tablets has 5 grams. So it's, again, very efficient because you absorb all of it. By the way, spirulina is a cyanobacteria. Why that's important is because it does not have a cellulose wall. So there's nothing for your body to break down to get access to all the aminos, which also in spirulina, it's loaded with B vitamins, which convert the aminos into energy. And this is where your focus and your physical energy come from, is that conversion. And also the energy you get is just, I call it quiet energy. It's not a stimulant. All of the energy you get is from the nutrition. It's the aminos, it's the B vitamins. It's also loaded with iron, and iron is what carries oxygen in your blood. And so that gives you more energy. It's a vasodilator, so your blood flow is faster and better. And then you have all the other nutrients that go to work. So it's very, I call it steady Eddie. There's no rush, no crash, you just feel awake. Now, if you took athletes take full 30 tablets, 10 for your average consumers is fine. But if you took 30, you would have the best workout of your life. And you could, I would say you could take 10 or 20 and it will satisfy your hunger. Both algae are ketogenic. That means there's 0 carbs. So they do not increase your glucose or decrease your ketones. So for those of you who are doing intermittent fasting, which I do, it's fantastic because now you can stay in a fasted state and not without any hunger, without losing focus, no cravings. I mean, it's really the perfect scenario. So, and then at the cellular level, and we'll get into this in more detail, spirulina contains nutrients that get to the mitochondria instantly, that protect the mitochondria and to help them generate cellular energy. Cellular energy is what fuels everything in your body. Your walking, talking, sleeping, thinking, digestion, swallowing. Everything is determined by this cellular energy, which is called ATP, and it's all created by your mitochondria that are in your cells, and we'll get into that detail in a minute. Cellular energy, I make the analogy, cellular energy is like money. When you have more money, you can do more things and you have more choices. Cellular energy is exactly the same. You can do more things and you have more choices. So finding ways to protect your mitochondria, because they're the ones that are generating that cellular energy for you, should be your number one goal. And you can multiply your mitochondria by a variety of things: exercise, red light, and as you're going to find out, algae is a great way to protect them and help them function better, because when they aren't functioning, they send wrong signals, they die, and this is what leads to all of these diseases and the symptoms that you may be experiencing, like brain fog, breakouts, bad digestion, bad sleep. All roads lead back to mitochondria, damaged mitochondria. So it's pretty important, but it's not, so the energy you get is really at a cellular level. It's not a stimulant. The energy bits in spirulina are cellular energy. A stimulant is like caffeine or chemicals or sugar, and you get a rush and a crash, and you probably get an insulin spike at the same time. None of that happens with spirulina. By the way, spirulina is safe for all ages, from newborns, children, pets, grandparents. No interactions, drug interactions, nada, nothing. It is probably, at least ours, is the safest, purest food, remember it's food because it's grown in fresh water, that you will ever put in your body. And the changes and benefits are almost too long the list is too long to believe. So I came up with this quote that's algae's benefits: too simple to believe, too powerful not to. I'm going to say that again: too simple to believe, too powerful not to. You're going to hear about the powerful bit in a second, but here we are, we're all looking for the magic whatever bullet to stop disease and longevity, improve our longevity, and we're looking for all these fancy gimmicks and devices. And you know what? It's algae, and it's been here for 4 billion years, but it's not sexy. In fact, it's certainly not new. It's the oldest life on Earth. And I'm just so proud to be helping you understand it, because you should run, not walk, to go get yourself some, because why wait another day or even another hour to start feeling better, to start your path to better health? Because our bodies have over 30 trillion cells in them, and every day 30 trillion die and 30 trillion more grow. So whatever health condition you are currently experiencing, good or bad, is not permanent. It's going to change tomorrow. There's a great quote I love, an Asian quote. It says, "You never step in the same river twice." And your body's the same way, because it's constantly being exposed to things that are good or not good. You know, you might get indigestion from one meal, and if you were smart, you go, well, I won't be eating that again. You have to think of your body as your own petri dish, and you have to experiment with and be observant about what's working and what's not. But I can almost promise you that 100% of the time, algae will work for you. You may want to take it for getting more energy, but you're going to find out your sleep is better, or you don't have skin breakouts, or your labs, when you go get your blood tested, you have better iron, you have better everything. So you may be taking it for one reason, but it will give you a whole host of other benefits, because algae is the real deal. A lot of people are taking supplements, and I say, well, algae has over 40 vitamins and minerals, chlorophyll, all these pigments, all these other polyphenols, proteins, and it's a perfect blend that's been made for us by Mother Nature. It's the orchestra of health. When you take individual supplements, it's like listening to the grade 3 soloist, and they will never compare. And by the way, most supplements, you don't absorb most of the ingredients, and when they work in isolation, though they're made with things that are extracts, and extracts don't exist in nature. So you're trying to put together something when the orchestra is already there. And it has all the factors and cofactors, which is why the equivalent would be harmonies when you get all these different instruments, and you can't have those harmonies when you put them in individually in your body. And so, Mother Nature has our back, and you can't get any better than what she's provided to us. So you just the goal is to make it safe, and so it's good for everybody. And the last thing before I get into the mitochondria is the other thing about algae, particularly chlorella, because I spoke mostly about spirulina, which is energizing because of the protein and the bees. Chlorella's claim to fame has the highest chlorophyll in the world. And what I'm showing you is a picture of the chlorophyll cell structure and your hemoglobin, and they're virtually identical. So because chlorella algae has the highest chlorophyll in the world, has 500 times more than arugula and 25 times more than liquid chlorophyll, it's very healing. Chlorella is a wellness algae, and it does that through the chlorophyll, which is very cleansing. By the way, chlorophyll is a fat-based pigment, so it also heals your cell walls. It has the hardest cell wall in the plant kingdom, which attaches to toxins. It pulls out all heavy metals, lead, mercury, radiation, aluminum, alcohol, lactic acid, glyphosate, pesticides, whatever it is, it pulls them out. Between the chlorophyll and the ability to pull out toxins, it also has the highest glutathione in the world, which is an antioxidant that is also very detoxing. And it has fiber, which feeds the gut biome, and that's where all the action is. And by the way, that's where your immune system is. And chlorella has all the nutrients that your immune system needs. So chlorella is very much a wellness and detoxing, cleansing algae, as opposed to spirulina, which is an energizing and nourishing algae. And your body goes through a detox repair cycle when you sleep. So you can take either algae at any time of day, but we generally recommend spirulina in the morning or the afternoon or before a workout, because that's when you're tired and hungry and you want energy. And we generally recommend the chlorella before bed, because that's going to facilitate a better sleep. It has the highest tryptophan in the world, and it will facilitate a better cleanse, detox, and repair. So, but for detox, you'll need more, generally 10 tablets of spirulina, 10 of chlorella will give you the nourishment and the energy that you need from the spirulina and the wellness benefits from the chlorella. But for detox, you'll need closer to 20 or 30. And one last thing to help people understand the difference between the two of them before I dig into the mitochondria. I speak at a lot at conferences at hotels these days, and it occurred to me that spirulina, because it's so nourishing and energizing, it's sort of like at a hotel, it's sort of like room service. Gives you everything that you need for your day, and feed you at the mitochondria level, and so that's one thing to think about. Then chlorella, because it's very cleansing, it's sort of like housekeeping at the hotel. So, because it cleans out all the toxins in your brain and your body, the junk in your trunk, and allows you to get on with your day. So think of spirulina as housekeeping, spirulina as room service, and chlorella as housekeeping. The other way you could think about it, and we'll talk about this in a minute, because there's so many mitochondria in your cells in your brain. There's 2 million mitochondria per cell in your brain. It has the highest concentration of mitochondria in your entire body. And there's a great book that just came out called Brain Energy by Dr. Chris Palmer.
Yeah, I read it.
He's a psychiatrist. He's terrific, and he's at the Harvard Medical School. Anyways, he talks about how all brain issues, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, doesn't matter what it is, are related to damaged mitochondria. And as you're going to find out in a minute, spirulina is so protective and healing for your mitochondria. So think of spirulina as brain food. And it makes sense too, because we all know about salmon being brain food, fatty fish. Well, and people get omega-3 from fish oil. Where do you think the fish get the omega-3 from? From algae. So, but most fish oil, by the way, is rancid by the time you get it, and it's killing the oceans. So spirulina is a much better source, never goes bad, never goes rancid, and it's brain food. Brain food never goes bad. Your fish will go bad after about 3 days. So think of spirulina as brain food. And again, because chlorella has the wellness, detox, gut health issue, think of it as your gut health algae. So spirulina works from the top down, chlorella works from the bottom up. And so that's energy bits and recovery bits is our chlorella. So that's a bit of a quick wrap up or summary of the differences of the two algae, why they're food, why you need them. And now I'd like to swing in, Stephanie, if that's okay, into the importance of mitochondria and why algae is so perfectly suited for protecting them and protecting you, because when they're protected, you're protected.
Yeah. I mean, we know that all metabolic health issues are related to mitochondria damage and brain health. I mean, just like you just showed, Dr. Palmer's his book and how, we know that now mental health issues and all these kind of brain disorders and the rise of, Alzheimer's and dementia, these are all, very, very important when it comes to, we need to really be thinking about eating for mitochondrial health. And so you've got some exciting news about how spirulina, specifically the energy bits spirulina, has actually proven to improve brain health. Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll walk you through what's going on at the mitochondria level so that you can understand when I get to the results of the test. So in your cell, you have a bunch of stuff, like your nucleus. By the way, there's 22,000 of them. And then you also have these peanut-shaped things, which are your mitochondria. And inside the mitochondria is where your ATP is produced. That's the cellular energy. Now, what people don't talk about much is that when you generate ATP, it's through this thing called the electron transport chain. I won't dig into that unless you want me to. But a byproduct of ATP are free radicals. And so the problem is, though, your mitochondria, you probably didn't know this either, your mitochondria have their own DNA. There's only 37 compared to the 22,000-ish regular DNA. But your mitochondria DNA are located inside the mitochondria exactly where the ATP and the free radicals are being produced. They are front row and center. Your regular DNA is way over here. It's nowhere near where the free radicals are being produced. And that DNA generally lasts your entire lifetime. on average, your mitochondria DNA lasts about 10 days because they are constantly being bombarded by free radicals. Now, if you've ever sat near a bonfire or a fireplace and you got too close, sparks might fly and then you might get burned. So think of these free radicals that are a byproduct of the ATP production like sparks, and they are burning your mitochondria DNA. And the reason why that's very, very bad news is because your mitochondria DNA control everything in your body. They control your regular DNA, they control the cellular communications. And so when they're constantly being bombarded, they either die or they mutate. And this is what leads to disease. Doesn't matter whether it's breakouts in your skin, bad digestion, heart disease, brain disorders. The damaged mitochondria DNA lead to damaged health. It's all proven. And I'm just going to show you a picture of an actual damaged mitochondria on the left. In the right is a healthy one where you see all the cell structures quite nicely knit together. When the mitochondria gets damaged, what's called the electron transport chain gets damaged and it starts to expand. And so it can't transfer the electrons, which cause even more free radicals to be released, which cause more damage. So the sad thing is with mitochondria damage, it can go on for decades without you even being aware of it. The symptoms just start showing up. But as it cycles itself into damage, it just keeps getting worse and worse unless you have some kind of intervention. And that's what spirulina will do for you, is provide you with a healthy nutrition-based intervention. So let's find out what that intervention is. So since those mitochondria have that the production of the ATP going on, and that's where your DNA is located, we need to find, and the DNA is being damaged by all these free radicals. We need to find a way to protect them. So there's two ways to do that. You can reduce the amount of free radicals being produced, and you can remove the free radicals. So let's talk about the first one. It's probably going to be the easiest for you. So the best way to reduce free radicals is to reduce your refined carb load. That's reduce your sugar, any white processed foods, because refined carbs result in the highest amount of free radicals being produced in that production process of ATP. Second option is to just adopt either a keto or a low carb diet. So that's eliminating, sugars, refined foods. If you're keto, obviously lots of fats, but you don't have to go full keto. You just reduce your carb load. But even better is fasting, intermittent fasting, long-term fasting, and algae, because both of them result in virtually no free radical. You'll never get to zero because just breathing causes free radicals to be released. But algae and fasting create virtually no free radicals. So number one, fewer free radicals, less damage. When I look at someone, I can tell whether they eat a lot of sugar, because that sugar is very damaging to your skin, just like it's damaging everything else. Your skin is visible, but whatever damage you see on your skin, trust me, that damage is going on inside too. You just can't see it. So people with lots of wrinkles, yes, they might be exposed to lots of sun, but in many cases, it's also a lot of sugar. It doesn't matter what the source of sugar is. So you need to be aware that these things are going on inside your body. You may not just be aware of it, but that's why I like to tell people how your body works, at least the mitochondria, because when knowledge is empowerment, and nobody gives us a operating manual about how our body works or how to protect it. So that's sort of what I'm doing, because I also not only want you to know how your body is working and how to protect it, I want you to know what the solution is, especially one that's available, nutritious, and easy, because so you don't have to go buy a hyperbaric pressure device unless you really want to, but you don't have to. So we just addressed reducing your carbs will reduce the number of free radicals. Okay, option 2 is to remove the free radicals. Now, normally, you know that antioxidants have been shown to counteract free radicals. But the problem is, and all your cell walls, including mitochondria, have what's called a lipid membrane. It's a fat membrane. But mitochondria have a second membrane inside that lipid membrane. And that second membrane is impenetrable by virtually all antioxidants. Vitamin C, vitamin E, none of it can get in there. By the way, drugs can't get in there either. And this has all been documented in science because they did so many studies with vitamin E and vitamin C and found that it had no impact on reducing disease or extending longevity, zero. And I think we've realized it's because they can't get in there into that inner membrane. Now, the good news is there are a few antioxidants that can, and they include glutathione, superoxide dismutase, and chlorophyll. And guess what? Algae has the highest concentration, at least ours does, of superoxide dismutase, glutathione, and chlorophyll. Ta-da! So, by the way, melatonin can get in there too, and I think also CoQ can as well. But so now, when you take algae, you're getting the 3 most powerful antioxidants that can get into the inner membrane and stop that free radical damage. Now, the good news is your body makes glutathione and melatonin and superoxide dismutase from the moment you are born. So you've had protection from these free radicals since the moment you're born. But the bad news is your body stops making them after the age of 30. And this is exactly when we start to see disease kicking in, weight gain, brain fog, trouble, and it just gets worse and worse. So when you're young, you've got all that great protection. You can go out, party all night and get up the next morning, no problems. But once you hit 30, and certainly 40 and 50, by the time you're in the 60s, there's virtually zero glutathione being produced. Obviously, you don't produce chlorophyll, and virtually zero superoxide dismutase, which is an enzyme, by the way. And you can't find glutathione or superoxide dismutase in food. There's like 0.000% of superoxide dismutase in cabbage, and there's a small amount of glutathione in meat, but not in any amounts that would do anything for your mitochondria, and they also get damaged in the gut lining. And what do these nutrients do? Well, superoxide dismutase is known as the most powerful antioxidant in the world, even more than glutathione. And basically what it does is it turns the free radicals into water. It's like having a fireman in there, hosing down all those free radicals. And by the way, the reason why it's so important is the most damaging free radical that is released in your mitochondria is called superoxide. And this nutrient called superoxide dismutase is the one that neutralizes it and turns it into water. And I was curious about a year ago, I thought, well, why is the superoxide the most damaging free radical? So I dug around in some PubMed articles, and it turns out superoxide has 3 unpaired electrons. Usually a free radical has 1 unpaired electron, and that's why it steals it from another cell structure or molecule, and that's why it's so damaging. And that's why antioxidants will have extra electrons that they can donate to a free radical to neutralize it so it won't bother any of the other molecules. But superoxide has 3, so it's 3 times as damaging. And this is why superoxide dismutase is the solution for protecting your mitochondria, because that's a free radical that is 3 times as damaging. So you get 3 times the benefits when you have superoxide dismutase. But here's the problem. Superoxide dismutase is an enzyme. And as I mentioned earlier, almost all other companies that make algae, except for frozen spirulina, use high heat to dry their algae because they're lower priced, higher volume, so they have to get to market quickly. And what does that high heat do? It damages or kills all enzymes, including superoxide dismutase. So you may be buying spirulina because you've heard about the superoxide dismutase, but check to find out whether that company is using high heat to dry it. The only other spirulina I can recommend, as I mentioned, is frozen spirulina, because I know for a fact that that superoxide dismutase would be active and live. So it's a very powerful nutrient, not found anywhere else in nature. And there are 25,000 studies available in PubMed, various medical libraries, proving the health benefits and the protection offered the mitochondria with superoxide dismutase. They've shown it stops heart disease. It stops brain disease. It helps with prevent Alzheimer's. And it's unbelievable what this nutrient has been proven to do, and yet it's not available in any other food and not available in most other algae. There is some in chlorella as well, but spirulina has the highest concentration. So it's your go-to. And I'll get to the brain in a minute, because that's one of the things that helps the brain heal, because there's so many mitochondria in your brain. And so if you've got so much superoxide dismutase going to work in there, then obviously you're going to feel some benefits. So and again, it stops the damage. So it's protecting the mitochondria so they either don't die, or they are now able to generate ATP more efficiently. And that ATP is used for your immune system, so you can create more killer cells and T cells and protect your health that way. Or it will help with the nerve endings. By the way, superoxide dismutase is also proven to protect your telomeres. We'll get to that when we get to the brain. And telomeres are where your DNA is stored, and when your cells replicate, or the telomeres over time replicate, they shorten, and which means the DNA now gets exposed and can unravel and become damaged, and that leads to also disease and a slippery slope, chronic aging. So the fact that superoxide dismutase has been proven to protect your telomeres is also pretty sweet. One more thing before I get to the brain. Another powerful nutrient I want you to be aware of that's in spirulina is the blue pigment. It's called phycocyanin, and I'm going to spell that out for you, because I want you to be able to Google this, so you know that I'm not telling you anything that's not documented. Phycocyanin is a blue pigment, and it's spelled Phycocyanin, phycocyanin. The only place you can get phycocyanin is in spirulina. Doesn't exist anywhere else in nature. So why is phycocyanin so important? Well, scientists have found that it kills cancer cells. Now remember, I'm not saying my spirulina kills cancer cells. I am telling you that scientists have discovered that phycocyanin kills cancer cells, and phycocyanin happens to be in spirulina. So if you want to Google phycocyanin and cancer treatments, you can read all the articles that I've been reading, and here's one of them. So I'm showing a picture of a 24-hour sequence where they took some cancer cells and put it in a petri dish, and they put a dye in there so you could see the cancer cells. And then they added phycocyanin to the petri dish. This time lapse shows that after 24 hours, the petri dish went from being completely clouded with cancer cells to virtually none. 24 hours. And here's the amazing thing. The amount of phycocyanin they used to do that, one of our algae tablets, Energy Bits spirulina algae tablets, has 4,000 times more phycocyanin than was used in that experiment. So I'm just telling you, phycocyanin has been proven to kill cancer cells. You may be curious about what exactly happens. So what happens is, in your cell, remember I alluded to this thing called the electron transport chain. It's basically 4 molecules embedded into the mitochondria inner membrane. And the electrons are moved from one molecule to the next, sort of like in a relay race, where the runners will pass the baton from one runner to the next, and hopefully the last runner crosses the finish line. So the making of your production of your ATP is similar to a baton race, except instead of a runner, you have these little molecules. And instead of a baton being passed, you have electrons. And there's this little carrier molecule between the third and the fourth station to move that electron across. And it's called cytochrome C. You may not ever have heard of cytochrome C, but it's very powerful. So here's what happens. In a healthy cell, phycocyanin, the blue pigment in spirulina, allows that cytochrome C, I call it a carrier molecule. Think of it as like a shuttle bus at an airport. You can't get to your flight if you're at a big airport and there's a shuttle bus. So think of it as a shuttle bus. That cytochrome C is like a shuttle bus that takes the electrons to the next station so more ATP can be produced. So in a healthy cell, cytochrome C facilitates that. That's one of the reasons why spirulina gives you energy, because the phycocyanin in it is helping move those electrons across to the final station to generate more ATP for you. However, it turns out that if you have a senescent cell, which is basically, they call it a zombie cell, a cell that's over-replicated itself and can't do anything anymore. It's sort of like, I say it's sort of like someone who's retired, but they refuse to leave the office and they're still hanging around making a mess. That's a zombie cell. It can't do anything anymore, but it's inflammatory and it doesn't die, but even though you'd want it to. So in a senescent cell, a zombie cell, or a cancer cell, the phycocyanin triggers that cytochrome C molecule to target the cell and kill it. Amazing, right? So it has selective use. In a healthy cell, the phycocyanin facilitates the production of ATP and your energy. In an unhealthy cell, it facilitates the release of the cytochrome C molecule so that it targets and kills the cancer cells or senescent cells. And this is used in the chemotherapy treatments now. In fact, what they do, one of the ways they can determine if the chemotherapy treatment is working is they measure your blood to see how much cytochrome C is in there, because that will tell them how much has been released in the process of killing the cancer cells. Pretty amazing, right? That's why I tell you, spirulina and the nutrients like phycocyanin, they're the equivalent of Mother Nature's cancer protection, honestly.
Yeah. Huge.
It's just doesn't get any more powerful. And by the way, cancer and heart disease represent 75% of our deaths these days. Mm-hmm. And with all the billions of dollars poured into cancer research, and they don't seem to have any reason or anything yet to prevent it. Some of these treatments are I mean, I started the company because my sister had breast cancer. So that's what got me into this whole thing. I wasn't planning on building a company. I just wanted to help my sister heal. And it just breaks my heart. Every single one of us has cancer in our family or in our immediate circle. And that's just unacceptable to me. And when I know that there's a solution that exists and it's pretty affordable and available to everybody at any age, and you're never too young to start building your protection, your firewall, because cancer is everywhere. So I'm just putting it out there. But here's the other thing. Phycocyanin is damaged by high heat. Here's a chart that shows you lose 50% of the value once you expose it to high heat. And so again, with these other companies that use high heat, you're not getting, I think, the most two powerful nutrients in spirulina. Yes, it has lots of protein. Yes, it has lots of other stuff, but it has phycocyanin and superoxide dismutase. And those two alone are reason enough to be using it every day, not just occasionally, every day. By the way, when you take out spirulina every day, your grocery bills will go down. You don't have to buy as many supplements. You'll feel great. You'll look great. Everything works better because your mitochondria are being protected, and you're getting rid of crappy old senescent or hopefully cancer cells too. So I think that's pretty powerful. to
I
me.
mean, it's a win-win, right, Catherine?
Exactly. Like, instead of asking yourself why would you be taking spirulina or chlorella algae, and I haven't talked a lot about chlorella, but the better question is, why wouldn't you? I mean, really,
Absolutely.
when a
Yeah.
solution has been proven in 100,000 studies, and the problem is scientists, as we know, like to talk to other scientists. And when I started this company, it was just, as I said, to help my sister. And I kept telling the universe, find somebody else, because there was so much science, and I have an MBA. I had no science training whatsoever, but I was determined to figure out why this was working so well. And so I've probably read 3,000 or 4,000 PubMed articles, and I now call myself a citizen scientist.
Yes.
and you know what? I invite you to do the same thing, because the information is there. Although I have done all the heavy lifting for you, so you don't have to anymore. But it is there, but you got to go through a lot of work to find out and teach yourself. I had to teach myself metabolic health. I had to teach myself cellular health and nutritional health. It just, but I'm a very motivated person. So,
yeah.
yes.
Well, I mean, we learned a lot today. I mean, you really educated us on all things algae and the metabolic health and, cancer and improvements in brain functioning.
Well,
so
I'll give you one final little bit about the brain, because that was our clinical trial that we did. And for years, brain health has been an issue for contact sports, especially things like football, because the kids would have a concussion and they would need to know when to let the athlete back in sport. So I'm showing you a picture here. They would do an EEG of the brain. And this is the first picture would show an EEG of a brain that's healthy. It's got lots of red and yellow, lots of activity. And then there would be a concussion, which would prevent all brain activity. It'd be all inflammation. The blue is inflammation, and no brain activity. And when the athlete was tested again, and the EEG looks like this, which was lots of red and yellow, which showed lots of activity again, then the athlete would be allowed back into play. And I show you that because we did this small clinical trial with an organization called Gray Team. They're a nonprofit based in Florida. Their website is grayteam.org. I invite anybody to go check them out and support them. Their goal is to stop the suicide rate of military veterans, which is at a heartbreaking 35 to 50%. 35 to 50% of military veterans are committing suicide. That's crazy. It's just heartbreaking. So they're trying everything they can. They've been partnering with lots of hacking companies, doing different devices. And we met them many times, and they said, well, let's do a small study. So we did. And what we did is we took a small group of people, veterans who had had brain issues for over 20 years. They've been discharged, but one had multiple sclerosis and various depression situations, hard time sleeping, just not functioning at their peak. And we did a brain scan. And then for 30 days, all we did was give them one pouch of spirulina tablets. So that's 30 tablets of energy bits. Nothing else. They changed nothing else. And we also had a what's called a biostrap, which would measure their heart rate variability and their sleep scores and stuff. So what I'm showing you is an example of what happened. The first brain scan was all blue, just like when that athlete had the concussion. This is indicative of high inflammation and in lack of brain activity. This particular shot is what's called the occipital brain lobe, which is the front executive decision-making part of your brain. And we also did a scan of the back parietal lobe, but the same thing. Both cases, massive amounts of blue, which is indicative of massive amounts of inflammation. 30 days later, we did the EEG. We probably could have done it in a week and would have found the same results. Lots of brain activity restored, lots of red and yellow, a little bit of blue, but lots of brain activity in both the occipital and the parietal brain. Nothing else changed. All they did was take 30 spirulina tablets of our particular brand, Energy Bits. We also, through this biostrap, they measured their heart rate variability. And this particular person, their sleep score went from 68 to 73, small adjustment, but their heart rate variability went from 55 to 80. That's a 50% increase. almost unheard of. And all they did was take spirulina tablets. And again, Dr. Palmer's book about all brain issues are based on mitochondria damage. And because the inflammation was so decreased in the brain from taking the spirulina, which does have other elements to it. It has the spirulina or the phycocyanin, it has the superoxide dismutase, it has chlorophyll, which is very cleansing. It also has high essential fatty acids. So there were other nutrients, but I'm pretty convinced that the majority of the activity and the improvement was based on the superoxide dismutase, because of the healing properties we've seen so far.
Amazing.
So it's I'm bursting to try to help get this out to people where it can do so much good, and from something that's safe and pure and scientifically backed, and it's good for everybody at any age for any reason.
Yeah,
like, take it for one thing and you'll enjoy benefits in other parts of your life.
Well, let me tell people how to find it. energybits.com. And also, please use the coupon code FIRETEAM, FIRETEAM, one word, for 20% off your order. So if you use the coupon code from the Fire Team Whiskey Warrior Wellness Podcast, you get that savings. So go over there right now, use that coupon code. You're crazy not to use it, as that's the bottom line up front. Crazy not to use it at this point. So Catherine, thank you so much for coming back on the Warrior Wellness Podcast. You are just a wealth of information.
Thank you for doing what you do, because there's a lot of people that need help, and so it's going to it takes a lot of us to turn the boat around, right?
It does.
But yeah, even come to see us and read our blogs. We have lots of great information on the blogs. But it doesn't matter. Energy Bits, again, is we have two brands of spirulina, Energy Bits and Beauty Bits. They're exactly the same. They're just branded differently, but they're the ones that for brain health, for mitochondria health, energy, nourishment. Chlorella, which we call Recovery Bits, is the wellness algae for detoxing. And if you were looking for simplicity, we have a brand called Vitality Bits, which is a blend of the two algae. Try to take at least 10 tablets a day. More is always better. It's food. It's not a supplement. So think of it as you would nuts or eggs or something like that. So, NHL players have 75 of each one before and after a game. There's no upper limit, but just get them into you. That's all I say.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. Thanks for sharing all that information. And I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
I hope so. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much. Hey guys, thanks so much again for joining us on another episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. Please make sure to subscribe, follow, like, all that good stuff on your favorite podcast platform and on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and leave us a review while you're there. And if you screenshot your review, email it to info@fireteamwhiskey.com with your name and address. You'll be entered into our drawing for a prize for just leaving us a review. So let us know what we're doing great, what you'd like to hear more about. And please go ahead and just give us a follow and give us a honest review, especially on iTunes, because that helps us reach other military members, veterans, and first responders with this vitally important information about how to improve their health, fitness, and wellness. We will see you at the next episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. I am your podcast host, former Army Captain Stephanie Lincoln, founder of Fire Team Whiskey.